Okay, so I'm going to jump into my presentation, but please feel free to unmute and ask questions or drop questions in the chat as we are going. Make sure that I'm on the right screen. That would be helpful. Alrighty. Okay, here we go. So, we're going to talk about launching your podcast on a budget. I'm going to specifically talk about what you need and what you don't necessarily need right now. But there's things that really are important, and there's other things that are optional, I like to say. So a little bit about me. I think I know most of you, but for those of you that don't, hi, I'm Dr. Julie Marty-Pearson. I am a podcaster, speaker, coach, and advocate. I have been in the podcasting space for over 5 years now. I currently have 3 podcasts, which I do not recommend. But once you're a podcaster, you'll find you're always having ideas for new ones. It's just this thing that happens to us. So my first podcast is The Story of My Pet, which I started over 4 years ago. It still exists, and I put out new content once in a while, but it really is my side project, my passion. I use it to advocate and educate around animal rescue, fostering, and adoption. So I get to have incredible conversations with people all over the world who are doing amazing things to help animals. My main podcast is Podcast Your Story, which is about podcasting. I share my tips and tricks for being a good guest, launching a show, and growing podcasts, as well as I interview other women podcasters about their journey and what they've learned. And my most recent podcast is Still Becoming Women Unmuted. That came out of just kind of frustration and just the world in general, and seeing there needed to be more conversations around things important to women, like physical and mental health, access to healthcare, community, lots of other things. So that's more of a fun one where I get to talk to other women and we just get to chat about things that are important to us. And then I also have a community membership, which I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end. So let's jump in with this one. I always love to ask, whether you can drop it in the chat or unmute and tell me, what is your podcast idea or dream topic that you would love to get to talk about on podcasts all the time? Anybody want to share?
Well, I'll share. I just started my podcast. It's called The Lovely Life, and it's episodes that are 15 minutes or less. So bite-sized mindset and self-care ritual goodies to help boost people's day and not a lot of time.
I love
And
that.
I have a lifetime supply of bite-sized tips, so I figure I can keep going on that one for a while without running out of material.
I love that. Yeah, bite-sized podcasts are super fun. I know a few people that do daily short episodes, and it's definitely a great way to get started and also to kind of see what people want to listen to. It's really a great way to see what people are interested in and what they're really responding to. Okay. Lisa says, I'm asked to answer questions about Reiki all the time and thought this would be reach a bigger audience. Absolutely. You know, one of the things I talk about all the time is that podcast is a great way to answer questions you get asked all the time. I was just doing a clip on social about people are like, what equipment do you need? And I always say a mic. That's the one thing you absolutely need if you're going to have a good podcast. So I love that. And Erica said, I just started my podcast too. I'm talking about how to get out of the hustle culture and more into how to find ease, peace, and joy. Ooh, I love that. You guys have got some great stuff. I love this. Okay, so let's talk about, it sounds like everybody has an idea or has already even started with an idea, but what do you actually need to launch and to keep it going? And Carly says, interviewing service providers about their inclusive practices with ADHD and autistic clients. So important. And I don't remember, Carly, if I mentioned this before, but I know somebody else with a podcast in that arena. I'll have to think about it and tell you at the end because I'm blanking on her name at the moment. Okay, so one of the things I like to start off with is to help people understand that podcasting isn't just about creating content. I mean, that is a reason why a lot of us do it, because it gives us content that we can put out in multiple formats. But it really is, how are you going to take your voice, your story, your expertise, and create a system and strategy that actually you see an impact on your business? So, yes, the benefits of podcasting are connection. You get to build connection with people, you get to interact with guests, you get to be on other people's podcasts. It's also about building community. That's one of the important things that I do with my podcast, is having a space for women to come to feel like they can get help, they can ask questions. It's a safe space. Of course, visibility. As Lisa was saying, I think it was, that, we get asked all these questions. We want to have another place to put it where people can actually find us, discover us, but also hear what we do, how we help people, and what we know, and how we can maybe help them as well. And then, of course, credibility. I will tell you, no matter what, when you say you're a podcaster, it levels your credibility up. Because I have found when I say, yeah, I'm a podcaster too, there's like, oh, okay, mutual respect that we both know we're putting in the effort to do this. And it takes a bit of a skill to be able to, and to do it well, and to do it consistently. There are a lot of myths about podcasting. One is you need expensive equipment. No, you do not. I started my podcast with a $30 mic and free tools. So, yes, you can get more expensive equipment, but you don't need it to get started. Also, you're probably seeing a lot more of people doing it in studio. That is becoming more popular. More studios are being built specifically for podcasting, but you don't need that. Ultimately, yes, there are easy ways to make your sound quality better, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And actually, now you don't want it to be perfect. Why? Because 50% of podcasts that exist are actually being created by AI. So us as actual human beings want to say, oh, well, I don't know. It's okay to leave that in, because why? It tells us we're a real person and we're not AI generated. And that is becoming more of an issue in podcasting. So yes, you want your sound quality to be good, because you don't want people to go, oh, that sounds awful, I don't even want to listen to it. But it doesn't have to be perfect, because you want to show you're a real person and you're having real conversations. And last is that you need a lot of time and money to begin. Again, you don't have to spend a lot up front. There are a lot of free or low-cost tools. Yes, it does take some time, and I will talk about how you want to build time into your schedule weekly, monthly, to be able to be doing it consistently. But it doesn't take hours and hours and hours to get it ready. You can do it pretty quickly, and also, for not a lot of money. What you do need, though, is clarity. Why are you starting a podcast? What do you want to get out of it? And how are you going to be able to say if it is successful or not? So you have to be able to clearly answer, why am I starting a podcast? What is it for? And how am I going to know it's successful based on what? You want to set your goals. And to do that, you have to be consistent. And I will be honest, I am not great at consistency. I allow client work and other needs to overtake me getting out episodes every week sometimes. And that's okay. My pet podcast, for example, I've taken many breaks, weeks, even months longs with no new episodes. And what happens? People are still listening. People are listening to episodes from all over the last few years. But ultimately, when you're starting, you just need a simple plan. Why, how, and what is your goal, and to get those first episodes out. Okay, so let's talk about this. I know this is what a lot of you are here for. Let's talk about a budget-friendly toolkit. So what do you actually need? So as I was saying, I did a short earlier about this. The one thing you absolutely need is a mic, is an external mic. Why? Because if you're using the mic built into your laptop, your computer, even your camera, realize that it's grabbing the sound all around you, right? It's just grabbing whatever sound is there and it's pulling it. So it might pull in my fan above whipping around because it's hot. It might pull in when I'm clicking on the keyboards. It might pull in, dogs barking or whatever other things could be going around you. So an external mic is the best thing you can do for good sound quality and good voice quality. Now, there are a wide range of mics. I use the Samsung Q2U. I always mess that up. It ranges in about $80 to $100 currently, but there are many that are under 40 that are great quality. I have actually created a list that I will drop in the chat when we are done with this presentation, and you can look through. I have 4 or 5 different ones that are under 50, and then I have this one linked as well as some other tools. So for me, that is the best thing. XLR means it's built for the voice, it's built for getting your voice. USB means I can just plug the cord right into my laptop. I can even plug it into my phone. I have an adapter. So if I wanted to record on my phone, if I was out at an event, I went to CatCon last year for my pet podcast. So I could have walked around with my mic on my phone if I wanted to. I do have, the little Wi-Fi mics that work better, but that's what you want because you can plug it in. It makes it really easy to use with whatever setup you have. Having headphones is a great thing for recording and especially for editing. Wearing headphones when you're editing makes things a lot easier, but you can use any headphones. Most headphones are great. Like, you don't have to have super fancy ones. And I know some people who actually work in audio, have for decades, and they even say the plug-in or the Wi-Fi ones are great because they're Dolby. They're surround sound built in, so you're going to hear everything. And of course, the other thing is important, but you don't really have to buy equipment, is a quiet space. You want somewhere that you can kind of shut off from the rest of the noise. Having soft things that are better for absorption. You can buy cheap panels. I have blackout curtains, partly because my office is west facing. So afternoon, it just heats up like a sauna in the summer. So I have things in there that shield the sun. And then the curtains also help with sound quality. So there are a lot of things you can do that don't cost a lot. Ultimately, when it comes to equipment, your mic is the most important piece of equipment and the most vital. Otherwise, you can use everything else, ring lights, camera, whatever you already have, but your mic is your best investment when you're starting out. Any questions about equipment? Okay, let's talk about software. So the other important thing is, how are you going to record and edit? And there are lots of options. We were talking a little bit about it before we got started, but there are things a lot of people use that we know work. So in terms of editing, Audacity is a free, simple editing tool that you can edit just audio. That's what I started with. A lot of people I know who are Mac users use GarageBand, which is also free because it's already there. So those are great ways to edit. Zoom for interviews is fine. A lot of people use Zoom. There is nothing wrong with it. You can edit Zoom very easily, and Zoom also has integrations into some editing software like Descript. Now, if you're thinking about better quality video or wanting to live stream, then you're going to need a different tool. Zoom, you can live stream, but you can only live stream to one place at a time. There are several platforms that allow you to live stream to 5 or 6 places all at once. The one that I use and highly recommend is Riverside. Riverside is a recording tool. It records high-level audio and video, and you can invite people to join you just like with Zoom. And yes, StreamYard is the other one. Riverside and StreamYard are the ones you'll hear the most for live streaming. Ecamm is another one, but that is Mac only. So those are the top 3 that I hear the most. I talk about Riverside because that's what I've used, what I have experience with. The great thing about Riverside is if you were to use it for recording and or live streaming, you can also edit right in Riverside, so you don't need an additional software for the editing piece, which makes it very helpful. Most of what I show my clients is in my launch program. We talk about using Zoom because most of us already use this in our business. So right there, you're saving money. You don't have to add another one on. Use what you already have so it doesn't cost anything. I, after 4 years, have upgraded to Riverside, partly because I'm also testing tools for my clients so I can give them real feedback. So most of my clients will use Zoom, and they use what is called Descript for editing. I highly recommend Descript. It is so easy to use. I can just not even tell you. When I started, we didn't have these tools. So I was taught how to edit audio and how to like go in and edit the waveforms and all of that fancy stuff. You do not need to learn any of that now because you can do it in Riverside, Descript, and other tools very easily. So this box down here where you see my photo, you see some words, and you see some audio. This is what Descript looks like. When I upload audio or video, it automatically gives me a transcript, and I honestly don't have to do anything but edit in the transcript. You can go in and select words, a single word, a whole sentence, and you hit delete, and it deletes it from everything. So you don't even have to know how to do the fancy editing. You can do all of the editing right here in the transcript. And they also have some great buttons like Studio Sound. It goes through and cleans up all of the audio for you. It searches for filler words, and you can remove as many of them as you want. So it's actually so much quicker and easier to edit now. I highly recommend Descript. If you don't have a tool, if you're looking for a kind of all-in-one, Riverside is great for recording, live streaming, and editing all in one place. Any questions on the tools? And when we're done, I will share some links for all of these so you guys don't have to be searching for them. The other important piece, which not a lot of people know when you're first starting out, is in order to have a podcast, you have to have a podcast host. Why? The host is where you upload your episodes and then they send it out to all the places. So the host is creating your feed that then whenever you upload an episode, it gets sent to Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Good Pods, all the different apps and places you want it to go to, even YouTube. So in order to have, quote, a real podcast and be out in all of those places, you have to be set up with a podcast hosting platform. The two that I recommend and that I use myself are Buzzsprout and RSS.com. I will say Buzzsprout is really great for brand new podcasters. It is super easy to use. It is very easy to understand, and they are very responsive to questions. They have a community. They put out blog posts every week. They actually have their own podcast where they share how-tos on. So it gives you a lot of great information, and there is a free plan to start out with, so you don't even have to pay anything at first to get started. But I do recommend doing the low-end $19 a month because that gives you your own website. It gives you some other tools and analytics you don't get on the free plan, and they also just do a lot of great support. RSS.com is another big one. It's something I've been playing with more recently because they do allow you, again, there's free and paid plans. They have lots of options within those, but they allow you to monetize at very little downloads. As soon as you hit your first 10 downloads or 10 listens, they will allow you to insert ads into your podcast, and then you get a percentage off any of those ads that actually generate income. And this is very unlikely. Most places, it's thousands of downloads before you can get ads from other people. So I do love that about it, and it's one of the reasons I'm really testing it out with my newest podcast so I can give people better feedback. But if you're not even worried about that part of it and you're really worried about the content and just getting it out, I highly recommend Buzzsprout, and I will share the link for that. Any questions about hosting and what this means or how this works? Okay. Well, if we do, well, we can talk about it in a minute. Okay, so we've talked about equipment. We've talked about tools. What are the other things you need? There are 5 things you need to actually get your podcast set up and put out to all of those podcast apps. The first thing you got to talk about, which we already did, is your purpose. So my podcast exists to do what? And these are really important things to ask yourself and be able to clearly say, because once you have this, that's how you get your title, your description, all these other things. You want to think about, my ideal listener is who? Who do you want to be talking to? Who do you think your content is for? And when someone listens, I want them to feel what? And or take action by doing what? So I always give an example. My podcast, The Story of My Pet, exists to advocate and educate for animal rescue, fostering, and adoption. My ideal listener are current pet parents or people who are considering adopting a pet. When someone listens, I want them to feel inspired and I want them to take action by adopting a pet, signing up to be a foster, or volunteering for their local shelter. So that's very specific. My podcast Your Story, is very different. My podcast exists to help more women become podcast guests and hosts. My ideal listener are women entrepreneurs over 30 who are thinking about podcasting but don't know where to start, or have a podcast and want it to grow. When someone listens, I want them to feel educated and inspired and take action by becoming a guest, launching a show, doing XYZ based on the individual episodes. So think about how you would be able to clearly say these. And then that's where you're going to go next is your podcast name. And this is one that you're going to hear a lot of different opinions. There is no one right way to pick a name or all of that because it's always changing. But some very basic things are you need to choose a name that is clear, that is searchable, and is easy to say. You want to avoid clever names. I know sometimes that's hard for us when we're stuck with a name or we love a certain thing based on our business or branding. You just want to think about it. If you say it, can someone easily spell it, type it, search it? Because it's all about discoverability. You want to review podcast names that are similar. You want to make sure nobody else has the exact same name. Or if there was one out, maybe it's not active anymore. So you want to search on Google. You want to search in podcast apps. And what I tell everyone, and if you've ever been to one of my workshops before, I always mention this, listennotes.com is your best friend for research. Listennotes.com is a podcast directory. It lists all podcasts that are current and active, and you can search by keyword, by title, by topic, by name, by person's name. And you're going to be able to get a lot of information there that you don't see when you're looking at a podcast in Apple. And if we have time at the end, I'll show you what Listen Notes looks like and what all the information means. But definitely do some research before you choose a name or stick with it. You just want to make sure there's nothing out there that's very similar because you don't want any confusion. Once you have a name, you want to make sure you get the domain. You want to claim that name on socials. Even if you're not going to use it, it's better to have it and not use it than have someone else come behind you and claim it and then you can't use it. So there's a lot of things like that once you have your name that you want to get set so that you are covered and protected. Next is your cover art. So most hosts, when you're uploading, it'll either be 1080 by 1080 or I've noticed RSS.com asks for 300 by 300. Those are typical. If you use Canva already, you don't have to pay anything. They have probably thousands of example podcast cover art. And so you can use that to create it. And what I'm showing to you guys right now, you see there's like 6 different photos here. These are all different versions of cover images for my pet podcast. Why do I have so many? Well, I have basic ones over here that are just the name, that are more like a logo. But these ones over here are what I use when I'm posting on social. So when I have a new episode, I make at least 3 or 4 versions of the image. Because then when I'm posting that episode more than once, I'm not just posting the same image over and over and over again. And obviously some of them are just me. Some of them have guest photos. This yellow one is a version I use for blog posts. So it's really easy to set up a template. And then you just make a copy and you change a few things every episode and you have your new cover. But you want it to be also simple. You want it to, choose your main brand colors, make it simple and attention grabbing. It really is important, especially your first cover, that it has your name, your photo. So it's very clear because remember, a lot of these, we're looking at them like this big on your phone. So some of these are actually probably too busy for that. But for my main one, I try to make those clear. because you want to be able them to be clear when someone is looking at it on their phone, on their computer, because people search all of these in different places. Okay. Once you have your name and your cover art, next up is your podcast description. So this is the main summary of what your podcast is, what it is about, and who it's for. Typically, this is a 2 to 3 paragraph summary that's going to tell anyone looking at your podcast who's the podcast for, what will they learn, why should they listen, and a little bit about the host. So if you go and search podcast, you'll see on the main page there is a summary. This podcast is XYZ for so-and-so to listen to. Just like I was saying in the beginning when I was saying my purpose and who my ideal listener is, that's the beginning of your description. In order to get your podcast set up with your host, you need a title, you need a cover image, you need a description, and you need a trailer. So your podcast trailer is literally just one piece of audio or video that allows your host to create the feed to all of the major platforms. What I often suggest for my clients is doing a short 1 minute or less trailer that, like your description says, this is the story of my pet. I'm your host, Dr. Julie Marty-Pearson. I am here to share true tales of animal rescue, fostering, adoption from around the world. So just a short trailer that allows to be uploaded and get your podcast set up. What I always tell people is very few people are going to hear your trailer, because if that's all you have, no one's going to be searching it. No one's going to find it. No one's going to be boosting it. It really is just to get you set up. And then that way you have created your podcast, and when you're officially ready to launch, you can start uploading your actual episodes. But the trailer allows the host to create the podcast, and if anybody finds it, they get a sense of what the podcast is and why they might want to follow or subscribe. I also have my clients do a second trailer that's 2 to 3 minutes that they do release when they're officially launched, with additionally their first episodes, so that there is more content for people to consume once you've officially launched and you're asking people to go find it. Okay, questions on any of that? Okay, so the other thing I always love to cover in these workshops is planning your first episodes. This can be hard, right? Because I think we were talking about, like, there's so much we know, we have so much to share. It's like, how do we choose what those first episodes are about? And this is where I like to kind of help people with what should those episodes be. Of course, it's going to vary depending on your topic, the type of episode you're planning to have, but I highly recommend doing solo and guest episodes if that's the right fit for your podcast. Solos are super important because that is where you build connection with your listeners. You share your story, why you started your business, how you help people, how you've seen your clients become transformed through working with you. That is super important. And if your podcast is directly tied to your business, solos are more important than guest episodes, because that's where you're building your expertise and your connection. But guest episodes are great because that then opens your podcast up to new listeners and new communities. When your guest shares it with their platforms, that means there's more potential new listeners coming to your podcast. So both types are important and obviously depend on what you're talking about and what your purpose is. I always tell my clients to start with your first episode being about you, who you are, what you do, why you started this podcast, what's it about, because most of us want to get to know the host, unless we're going just simply for interviews, which, some podcasts are basically like daytime talk shows. We're just going to hear people talk to each other. But for us, it really is about building our credibility and getting people to know us. So your why, your story is a really great way to start off. Another great one for a first episode is your signature topic. So if there's something you speak on, you present on, you do workshops on, that's a great thing to do. I am working on doing episodes on a lot of what we're talking about. One just on your why and figuring out why you want a podcast and what does it look like, or choosing the right name or choosing the right podcast host, right? There's so many things I teach on that can be small episodes. Obviously, you can interview people, someone who complements your mission, or someone you've worked with. I had a recent episode with Jackie, who is a client of mine who just launched her podcast in March. So we talked about her journey and what made her decide to finally do it and how it was working with me. So obviously, yes, Jackie is getting a platform on my podcast, and people are going to go check out her podcast because of it. But I'm also getting people to hear how I helped Jackie do something that she realized she couldn't do alone. Another thing is answer frequently asked questions, myths about your topic or niche. Like, right, I always say, no, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to start a podcast, and here's why. So, like any of us, we all have a huge amount of content to give, but we want to think about what is most important for those first 5 episodes. And again, like I already said, sharing quick wins, tips, or client testimonials is also a great way to do that. And I highly recommend, if you're actually going to officially launch and you want people to start, listening all at once, have these first 5 episodes ready to go and put out multiple the first day, the first week, because what do we love to do if we find something we love? We love to binge. Think about, there have been many shows recently where I'm like, I'll just watch the first 1 or 2 and then I'm down the whole rabbit hole, right? Same with podcasts. If people love it and they love your trailer, they love your first episode, they want to keep listening. So having multiple episodes, especially 2 to 3 that first day, that first couple days, is really helpful because people are going to keep listening, but that also gives you a big boosted downloads right away because it's not just one, it's multiple episodes people can be listening to. And then from here, I do want to mention briefly, what is a workflow for actually creating an episode? Obviously, once it's recorded, you're going to edit. It's up to you. We all do it differently now. Some of us add intros if we want a different intro than how we started it. Some of us add a different outro if we want to say something at the end of every episode. We can add music for transitions. Or you can do none of that. Totally up to you. Some people edit a lot. Some people don't edit really much at all. That's something you'll figure out as you're doing it. Once you have your episode ready, you're going to write a title and you're going to write what we call show notes. So the show notes is the summary of that episode. So this is different than your description, where you're summarizing in general what your podcast is about. Each episode also gets a description. So this episode we talk about XYZ, my guest so-and-so, or this, and then you have links for people to click on. Obviously, if you want to create different cover images, which most people do now for each episode, you create those. And then you take the episode, the title, the show notes, and the image, and you upload it to your host. And then the host will send it out to all of the podcast players. Your host can also send it to YouTube, but that version is audio over a static image. If you want the video version to go to YouTube, that is a separate upload. But these are the steps for each episode. And I will tell you, as you do it more and more, this gets faster and more and easy as you get your system in place. And there's a lot of ways you can kind of do that, whether it's a spreadsheet or a checklist. But you just make sure all the things are done before you upload and publish. And most of the tools I've talked about, Riverside, Descript, as well as podcast hosts, a lot of them have AI built in that can help generate ideas for titles, for show notes. So you're very rarely looking at a blank page to get started. It's going to use the content from the audio or video and generate based on what you guys talked about or what you said. So it is easier to do a lot of these versus when I started, you actually had to pay hundreds of dollars just to get a transcript. Now I get a transcript in like 5 different places. So there's so many ways to make it faster now than even, 4 years ago, that it is a simpler process. And then the last piece of this I always like to talk about is, so you have your episode out, now what? Well, you want to email your list and say, hey, I just talked about what I think you need to actually start a podcast. And I always talk about mics and blah, blah, blah. You want to hear more of what I had to say? Here's the link to my newest episode. Go check it out. I also do static posts, sometimes carousels. I mainly hang out on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. That's where my people are. That's where I am. And so that's where I do most of my posts. I will take clips from my episode, post them. I post them mainly on Instagram and YouTube, but you can post clips on LinkedIn and Facebook too. Sometimes it just depends on how well they're doing. And as we all know, the rules change, seems like every day for them. But shorts on YouTube are really good. That's where you're going to get a much higher level of views than you will on the longer format episodes. And the great thing about shorts is you can upload them, but you can also link it to a full episode. So if someone finds your short and listens, they can see, oh, there's more, and I can go listen to the full episode on YouTube. Another great thing I highly recommend is a LinkedIn newsletter. I have one for each podcast, and every time a new episode comes out, I write an article, and of course in the article are links to the episode and other things, but it's a great way for more people to see the content. And related to that are blog posts. Creating a blog post from every episode with links built into whatever your offers are, your workshops, or anything like that, it's going to drive more traffic to your website. It's also going to drive more traffic to your podcast. Oops, I always forget that place. Go back. Okay. So what I want to show you here is I mentioned earlier that, from one episode, I'll make a lot of different content. So all the images on this page are from one episode on my podcast where I interviewed Alicia Galati, who actually runs a podcast production agency. So she does it for, bigger companies and higher level production. So over here on the left are the cover images I made. One of these is actually in the podcast players. One of them I used on social media. This middle one here is the YouTube thumbnail I made for the video version. Down here is the image I made for my LinkedIn article. This is one of the reels I made that I posted on Instagram and YouTube. And then this up here is an audiogram. So again, a static image with the audio overlaid, and Buzzsprout lets you create one of these for every episode at no cost. So all of these gives me how much more content, and it's just one episode. And I can post it in 3 or 4 platforms. I can send it to my email list. I can do a newsletter. So I like to show this because it shows you the way that the content you've created in one episode can multiply and be put in all these different places. So if you think about doing an episode a week, then all your content for that week relates back to your episode. It doesn't even have to use these images. It can be talking about the content you shared or what you talked about. So I want to show it from this side of thinking about how do you take that one 30-minute or 20-minute episode and then utilize it in all the places so that you're not having to recreate content when you've just created a big piece of content for yourself. And you can do it whether it's a solo episode or with your guest, because even when you're interviewing someone, you're still sharing. I still share my experiences. I still share my opinion, even when I'm interviewing someone else. So it's important to use all of the episodes, even when it's not solo of you. Okay, so I just threw a ton of information at you very quickly. So I want you to step back and think about what is one step you can take this week to keep going in your journey. Is it buying a piece of equipment? Is it choosing what you're going to use to record or edit? Or is it doing that list? What are my first 5 episodes? What are my first 10 episodes going to be about? Any of this can help you, make the step down as you're going to launch or continue to launch. And I just want you to think about it this way. Think about what is your budget? How much time do you need to be consistent? And how do you need to plan in order for that to happen now, but also down the road? Because podcasting is a long game. I will never lie to you. It is not a sprint. It is not a quick fix. It is a longer process. And so you want to give yourself time to create it in a way that works best for you. I also want to mention Podcasters, find your people. I offer a free networking event every month. I will give you the link when we're done. Please come and meet other podcasters and guests. You don't have to have a show or anything yet to attend. It's really just networking. I also offer a community membership where a lot of people can't afford to do full programs. I get it. We're all watching what we're spending right now. But I do offer a monthly membership where you can come to more deep dive workshops. I do live group coaching every week. I also do strategy sessions, and I bring in experts from outside in to talk about podcasting. I had the producer from Buzzsprout come. I had the guy who runs Podpage come, which is a website builder. So I really like to bring in their expertise and experience to my membership. And I also am doing a couple things. I have a fast track challenge next month where I'm going to drill down on a lot of the stuff we talked about and help you decide what's my title, what's my cover, what's my description, get your trailer ready. So if you're interested in that, I'll share the link. And as I probably mentioned before, I also have a group program. If you're looking for support for a little less cost, but also some accountability, I really love doing group programs because hearing what other people are doing or the questions they're asking actually helps you think of things you may not have thought of. Okay, so I'm going to stop share. And I will open it up to questions, but I'm going to grab some links for you guys right now. So I'm going to put in the chat. First one is my resource page. All of the tools and softwares I mentioned today are linked there. The hosts that I mentioned, the editing software. I have an Amazon list of all of the podcast equipment that I recommend. From mics to ring lights to soundproofing your world. I also dropped in the link if you're interested in doing the 3-day challenge with me. Those are some of the programs I offer, as well as my upcoming networking events. And I try to bring in speakers to those. We have a couple of people who have been in the TV, film, and podcasting world that are going to come in and answer all of your questions. Alrighty, anyone have any? Make sure I didn't miss. Oh, yeah, sorry if I missed mountain time. Sometimes, I try not. Sometimes I just put Pacific and make it easy on myself. I do try to include all of the time zones, but sometimes I forget. Okay. Any other questions? I want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
I just want to thank you because this is really great. I had a little question though.
Yeah.
Have you done any work with private podcasts?
I haven't. I've never done that, but they can be successful. So private podcasts are ones you create, but you don't release publicly. So you have to have a link to be able to listen to it. And I have seen people do that, especially like in memberships or communities. Like if I wanted to release episodes just for people who pay to be in my membership, then I would send it to them. And I kind of do that because any events we have, any workshops or speakers we have, I record them and then I put them on a private playlist on my YouTube channel, and only members can access it because you have to have a link to be able to find it. So that is like a private podcast. It's just a video version. But I do know people who use it as a lead magnet. Like, hey, have you been thinking about trying out this new diet plan? Well, check out my 3 free episodes on what I think about diets. Or it's a very random example that just came to my head. So yeah, private podcasts are great because it can be used as a lead magnet. It can be used, within a program where you're specifically creating the content just for people that are taking a program of yours. So I have seen people do that well. I haven't specifically done it in terms of podcasting, but it is a great option, especially if you want to provide value without having to do a lot.
It's something I'm considering for my program that's starting next month.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and so there are a few ways to do it. For right now, though, Buzzsprout and RSS.com don't seem to have those options as hosts. So
Mm-hmm.
what I've seen most people do is either do it via a YouTube playlist that's private.
Okay.
And actually, unlisted is better on YouTube because
Yeah.
what I found with private is it has to have their email, and if they don't have the right email, they can't access it. But
Right.
unlisted, if they have the link, they can see it. And so that does make it easier. I do believe Captivate, which is a hosting platform, has the ability to create private podcasts within their platform.
I'm using Hero,
Oh, okay.
and they have that ability as well.
Okay.
So
And I will
I
be honest, I don't always know all of them. There are so
I don't
many.
expect you to. There's nine
They're
million of them.
oh my gosh.
I
And
just I got a really good deal on Hero, so I decided to
and I
jump
will
on that.
say sometimes when you sign up free, they'll give you great deals. I know that
Mhm.
rss.com right now, I moved my podcast somewhere else to them, and because of that, they offered me 6 months of the paid plan for free. So that's another thing. It's like try it out because a lot of them do have free trials or free offers that, offset costs in the beginning.
Thank
I will
you.
make a note of that though because I want to check it out because I do get that question sometimes about the private podcast, but I have seen people use it. I've also seen people use it with their ads, like with meta ads, and then what it leads them to is a private podcast versus it just going to their general public one. And so I have seen people use that successfully. Other questions?
Yes, this is Lisa. I was curious. You're talking about private links, and I am very novice, so I'm assuming that if I were to that would be something I would be receiving from somebody, and I would click on it, and it would take me to their video. But on
Correct.
this side of it, I would be the one sharing that link.
Mm-hmm. Let me pull up my YouTube channel
Okay.
and I'll show you what it looks like.
And so does that link then like they can share it on, or it needs a password or a particular
It depends on how you set it up. On
okay.
YouTube, you're just sharing a link. So, yes, they could share it with other people, but typically I found if people are paying for something, they're not going to share it with other people because they feel
Yeah.
like I
Right.
paid to get this, so you don't get it for free. But
Right.
that is why some hosts, like Melissa mentioned, Hero has an option where you're creating the podcast on the host like a normal podcast, but instead of it being released out to all the public
Right.
players, it's just giving you a link to share with who you want to have it. And so people can't search and find that link because you have it as private.
Okay. All right. I can see that being very helpful in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. So here, I'll show you. So this is my YouTube channel. And this is
Thank
what it
you
would
very
look.
much.
Yeah, this is what it would look like if anybody was looking at it. So like if you go to it, this is what it's going to show. But if I go to what is called YouTube Studio, so that's actually your, dashboard. So this is like where I can see analytics of how different videos are doing and who's watching, and it's taking a minute to pull it together because it's data, so it shows you a lot. So this is the back end. But if I go to my content and I go to my playlists, you'll see I have a bunch of playlists. So this one up here is all of my guest episodes. Whenever I guest on a podcast and they have a YouTube version, I will, let me see if it'll let me open it. Yeah, I'll just open it here for you. So if someone is looking at my channel and clicks on this, it lists all the episodes I've been a guest on other people's podcasts. So that's a great thing to have on your page because then you're helping promote their podcast, but you're also getting views that show up on your page. So that's one thing I always love to show with playlists. And then you'll notice that some of them say public, some of them say unlisted or private. So this one right here is my membership community. So if you went to the front page of mine, you wouldn't be able to see this because it's unlisted. And so my members get a link whenever I update it. And so that they can look at, any of the recordings or the events that we've been having. So when they get the link, they're able to see all of these recordings of different events and speakers we've had in the community. But if you go to my front page and you click on playlists, I can see it, but you'll notice it says unlisted, unlisted versus public. So anything that's unlisted, only I can see, or if I've provided you the link. And the great thing about YouTube is you can create as many playlists as you want. If I wanted to create a playlist of just my solo episodes of my podcast, I could create that. But it also lists my podcast under the podcast section too. So it's being added to your channel in multiple places. And some of these are, if I go here, you'll notice some of them have different images. So any clips related to my podcast are also on the playlist. This is an audio version overlaid a static image. This is the full video version. And even though these don't have views because they're newer, I find I get views on both types. So you don't have to do video. You can just send the audio version to your YouTube if you want to do that when you're starting. I guess the big thing is there's lots of options, and sometimes that can be overwhelming. And so starting with what you've got is okay.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Melissa. I will definitely check that out. I think I've heard of it before, but I haven't heard it mentioned in a while. Any other questions about equipment or tools or... Oh, I know what I was going to show you guys. I will show you listen notes. Because, what? That's weird. Huh. My thing is telling me listen notes isn't secure. I have no idea why it's doing that. Yeah, worked on this one. Technology is so
Zoom.
weird. Oh my
Zoom.
goodness. Okay, so I'm going to show you this briefly. We have a couple minutes left. So this is what listen notes look like when you just go listennotes.com, right? And you'll notice 189 million podcast episodes. So pretty much any podcast is on here. It's part of the thing you set up when you get set up with Apple and Spotify. You get set up on Listen Notes. So you can explore the trending topics. You can look under certain areas, but literally if I put in, if I wanted to see, does someone have the name of my podcast? So I'm going to search Podcast Your Story and see what comes up. So now I'm getting all of these different podcasts with those words in the title, in the tagline. And so this is one way I would search if I want to see if someone is already using the name I want to use, right? So let's go look at sharing your story. What is this about? I'm going to show you guys this because I want you to see the data it's giving you. So it's going to give it's going to say, what is that podcast about? It's going to give you, this guy doesn't have a lot. So I'm going to go back and find my own one to show you. There we go. So this is my podcast, and so you see the image. I could go listen on Apple and other links. This is my podcast description. As I scroll down, it shows what categories my podcast is listed under. It shows how often it's updated, what's the average length, do I do guests, how long has it been going, how many episodes, all of that, and then it shows the most recent episodes. So it's giving you this data right here. You can't see a lot of this when you're searching in a podcast app. So that's one of the reasons I tell people to come on here. The other reason is, so let's say you found this one, and you're like, oh, I really like this one. I wonder if there's more like it. Over here on the right, you'll notice recommendations. So it's recommending podcasts. It can be similar names, similar topics, similar categories. I love that the first one is Podcasting Made Simple. That is the podcast with Alex Sanfilippo, who is the founder of Podmatch, which is a guest matching service. So that's cool. I also am similar to Jenna Kutcher's. So what's great about this is it'll show you others. So you can really go deep into your research if you're trying to think about, what are people already doing on my topic? How do I want to be different? Go look and see what's happening so you can do something that's different and not just like them. But this is also really great research if you're looking to guest, because once you find one, like if someone found mine and said, oh, I would love to guest on hers, I wonder if there's more like it, they can go right here and look at all these others they've been recommended. I will also show you my pet one because it's been out a lot longer. It has some data that my other one doesn't. So you'll notice up here you see a couple scores. There's this listen score, which I don't really pay attention to because it's very variable. But right here is this global rank. So based on all podcasts that currently exist, my pet one is in the top 5%. And so this is going to tell you a lot about a podcast. If you're a top 2%, a top 1%, that means they've been doing it a while, they're consistent, they have a ton of episodes, and people like it. So when you're searching for comparison, just realize when you see these numbers, more than likely they've been doing it for years. My podcast has been out for 4 years, and even though I only have 60-some episodes, I've been consistent enough and it continues to be listened to when I'm not putting out new content that it stays in the top. But you also want to realize that some of those rankings are attainable because only like 10% of all existing podcasts are actually active, which means they are regularly, weekly or monthly putting out new content. There is a huge percentage, like 60 to 70% of podcasts that launch never get past the first 10 episodes. That is a statistic that has existed and continues to. And that is why I talked about setting yourself up for success. What is your availability of time? Because I never want someone to launch something that they could tell in a month or two they don't have time to keep working on. And getting past that first 10 episodes puts you in a place with other podcasts that only a small percentage of people actually get to. So don't worry about your downloads or your ranking in the early days. It's all about getting out there and then keeping it going and being consistent. I know people who have been podcasting for a year or two where they really see an influx into their business, but then it's consistent because they have all this content that is evergreen, that is always out there for people to find. Okay, I know we're over time, but any other questions or comments or anything anyone wants to ask or share? Yay. Okay. I will also email you guys tonight with a link to this recording. And I will share again all these links in case you want to check anything out. And if you have questions or anything, feel free. I will also share the link to book a time with me. I'm happy to talk you through your idea or any of the things you're dealing with right now. Yay. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Great to see you, Melissa. Great to meet you, Lisa. The others that were here, I appreciate you so much. I know how busy we all are, so I always appreciate people showing up live. Really great to see you and hope to see you soon. Bye.